Hi, everyone. It's Denise Brown again. Thanks so much for being here. We are finishing up our Beginning Again retreat with Joan, who's going to help us figure out the answer to the question, what now? Okay, thanks, Joan.
All right, thank you, Denise. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So I do want to just preface this. This is, I kept asking that question, what now? And this is kind of how I found my new normal. And I'm going to give you a paradigm that you can use also. But you don't have to do the things I did. And you may not be ready to do anything right now. This is really about having a process that you can use whenever you're ready for whatever you want to do, big, small, or in the middle. So it's a framework, but like you do you, boo, right? It's all about you. So a little bit of background. I cared for my mom for about 6 years. I was doing it long distance. I was in Delaware. She was in Florida. And at the time I had 4 teens. I was going to law school at night. So it was 4 years, not 3. I was working during the day. And then towards the tail end of taking care of her, I was a new associate at a corporate law firm. I eventually, relatively not long, left the practice of law and became a certified life coach. Then I found Denise and became a certified caregiving consultant, educator, and facilitator. So let's just start with this concept of our new normal, right? We kind of talk about, I got to find my new normal. I don't love that because finding your new normal means you kind of stumble around and it's whatever kind of you run into. I like the idea of crafting, choosing, creating your new normal, because then it's a deliberate, intentional thing on your part. It's the difference between being at the effect of everything around you or making a decision and being in control. What now? That was kind of my question that got me going and got me started. And whenever you feel yourself asking that, try to intentionally answer it. Don't just kind of wander around. It's really not a one-shot deal. This is a process you can do over and over. And the more you do this process, the more it'll become a practice. So let's talk about this concept of what's normal. I love this quote. Maybe our normal is so subnormal that normal seems abnormal. Maybe we need a new normal. So when I was going to school, practicing law, running around with my kids, it was like in my 40 to 46 age range, right? And I'd wake up, feel like crap, wander, go through my day. I was overweight, hypertensive, kind of cranky. But you know what? The lawyers I worked with kind of were all the same. I thought back to my parents, and they would be complaining all the time about all the aches and pains. And the one phrase I learned from them is, oh, it's hell to get old, right? So I really told myself this is normal. And I really could justify it because I'd kind of look around and it's like, well, I'm better than them, right? So I'm doing okay. Well, not really. So eventually, when I started eating better and I started moving, there came the morning where I woke up and I didn't feel like crap. It's like, huh. And then it happened again and again. And the light bulb went off that, holy crap, I didn't have to feel that bad all that time. Maybe that wasn't normal. So you really want to question what you're considering normal to be. And maybe instead of just accepting what you see around you as normal, maybe you want to choose for yourself what normal you want. So how did I get there? There being my low point. Well, I was caring for my mom and I was doing it long distance. Just to give a little bit of background, I really wasn't the loving caregiver. I was a very reluctant, probably resentful caregiver. My parents were both alcoholics. It was kind of an abusive upbringing, right? So I had a lot of mixed feelings. Like, she was my mom. I loved her. Didn't really like her. Didn't want to spend time with her. I would spend time with her and it was draining. And then at the same time, people would be like, oh, aren't you so wonderful taking care of your mom? And I'd feel like shit because, like, I knew I was hating it the whole time. I didn't feel like this heroic figure that people were kind of painting me as. So I had all these mixed feelings going on. And, in the midst of that, I had a lot of other things going on. If you have teenagers, like, there's a lot of mixed feelings there, let me tell you. And as time went on, the phone calls increased, the falls increased. I got to where I was like living in fear. Like, if the phone rang and I saw that area code, it was like my stomach would drop. It's like, oh my God, I can't handle this now. But I would have to. And it all just kept accelerating. She was a lifelong smoker, lifelong alcoholic. She had COPD, peripheral artery disease. I think, pretty much chronic pneumonia, because every time she fell and they took her to the hospital, oh, you got pneumonia, let's put you on antibiotics. So I got the brilliant idea that for her 80th birthday party, we would do a surprise. And I really wanted to do it because her neighbors had been so helpful to me. I really wanted a chance to include them and honestly just thank them. And I got my brothers involved and got them to come. Like, they wanted nothing to do with her. They wouldn't even make phone calls to her. But I did get them to come to this party. But a few days before the party, she fell and was in the hospital. So instead of being at the community center where she lived, it was in her hospital room. And that really was the last time we all were together with her. Wish I could say it was like this loving, beautiful moment, but it was a moment, right? So not long after that, when she came out of the hospital, she went to rehab. She was in rehab, she fell back to the hospital. A lot of back and forth. When I went down to visit, I just flipped out on the doctors because she was not herself. She was altered. And I'm like, she fell and hit her head. Is there a reason you didn't do an MRI? Just explain that to me. And so they finally did one just to keep me happy, and it was fine. Turns out what it really was dementia from her having this raging C. diff infection. And, that killed her. I could go into a lot about all the stuff that happened, but in the interest of time, it basically killed her. So on January 11th, she passed away. And that was a turning point, right? It made me realize that, the runway in front of me is a whole lot shorter than the runway behind me. I really had to think about, is this how I want to spend my life, right? So that started the process that got me where I am now. And by where I am now, I mean, like, I really love my life and I feel like I'm living my purpose, and I am just so blessed. Initially, after her death, you're doing all the things, and I had to go back to work, and like, holding it together was the goal. A really good day was when I didn't have to shut my door more than 3 times to cry. It just was like, I think Jeff mentioned it. It was like I was just out of sync with everybody around me, and I was totally in that fog. So I got to say a word about my husband here, because he has always been the type that when I come up with some crazy idea, he would say, all right, we'll find a way to make it work. So, I'm realizing that on paper, I'm living the dream, right? Got a great job, got a great family, but it wasn't a dream. So I went to him and I said, like, I can't keep going into work. I can't do this. And I said, I'm going to ask for a leave of absence, but I don't think I'm going back. Now, like, to go to your husband and say, yeah, I know we got 3 kids in college. I know I'm making a really good income, but I want to quit. And he came back and said, you know what? We'll make it work. Love the guy. So it really became a turning point. And I really had to face some hard truths. So, hard truth number one, I was overweight, hypertensive, cranky, tired. Like, I was just totally depleted. I was in a job that really wasn't a good fit for me. Every time I had to put a suit on to go to work, I just felt like I was faking all day. I was so inauthentic. I didn't feel like I could be the real me. I really wasn't the person I wanted to be, not only because of being inauthentic, but I was really kind of a bitch and I didn't want to be around me. Like the difference between then and now is a lot. I realized I couldn't use caregiving as an excuse anymore, right? Like we all had that, I had that tendency. Oh, I got so much going on. I'm being a caregiver. I got this. When things settle down, then I'll deal with all this other stuff. So, items 1 through 3, I was just pushing away because I could use caregiving as the excuse. And I could probably add like hard truth number 5. I was also using working, having teenagers and everything else in my life as excuses not to deal with these things. It wasn't going to work anymore. So, like I said, the job was the immediate issue. So I take the leave of absence, kind of knowing full well I'm not going back. The day that started, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they would always go to Florida for 3 months. They lived across town from us. Now, this is the woman who, when I was in law school, she would come once a week, and because I was going to law school at night, she would come once a week, bring dinner, and have dinner with my husband and kids. And it got to the point where they're like, Grandma, just anything but chicken, because that's all Mom makes. So, she just was a really special woman. So she passes away the day they get back. She just had an aneurysm and was gone. So, I'm settling my mom's estate, and then I'm grieving her and my mother-in-law in 2 very different ways. Like, my mother was the example for me of what I didn't want in my life. And my mother-in-law was the example of energy, love, vitality that I did want. And then on top of that, like we talked about the guilt. Oh my God. I felt guilty because I was grieving the 2 differently. It was a really crazy time. After a few months, I did find a part-time job as an estate attorney. And it worked out really nice. I was a contract attorney. It was a father-daughter team. I was the 3rd attorney. So a little while later, the next turning point came. Now everyone loves before and after pictures. So there's my before in all its glory. And, we go on a vacation. Now this was like rare because when I was at the corporate law firm or in law school, my husband would take the kids on vacation while I stayed home and worked. So this was great. We went on a vacation, and it's actually hard to find before pictures because at that stage, I was always trying to make sure I was taking the pictures so I didn't have to be in them. And we're in California. We went on this hike. It was maybe 1.5 miles, 2 miles, kind of flat, shady. And the entire hike, I'm looking at my phone, making sure I got a signal because I'm starting to sweat. I'm out of breath. My heart's racing. I was really sure I was having a heart attack. I wanted to make sure they could call 911. Like, it was really awful. So we get to the end and we're looking at this gorgeous view. And I just sat down. It was like, I don't ever want to feel that way again. So I get back from vacation and I just decided on a program. It almost doesn't matter what that program was. It was more the decision to do something. And a lot of trial and error. The main thing was never quitting. And in about 18 months, I had taken off about 40 pounds. So, it was a good thing. And when I look back and I try to ask myself, like, why was this time different? Because honestly, I was kind of a pro at dieting. Like I could tell you, if you wanted to know how to do the cabbage diet, you want to know how to do Pritikin, any of them, Weight Watchers, all of it. I could tell you verbatim how to do them all. I just never could make them stick. So what was the difference? And it really was mindset. It was that realization that my choices are how I got there, and my choices were how I was going to get out of there. So then I lose the weight. And it's like, I thought everything was supposed to be wonderful once I lost that weight. We always think that when we get this done, then everything will be great. We always think that there is going to be better than here. Not so much. So the mindset work that I did in losing the weight, I started applying in other places of my life. And I came to the realization, I'm super stressed out with this job. And like waking up in the middle of the night worrying about my clients, not even worrying about the work I did, but just worrying about them, because I have a lot of widows coming. As soon as the widows come, I start putting myself in their place. Like, I love my husband to death. And that thought always comes, what if it was me, right? And so then I had to really look at, is the job worth the stress? And I really had to start facing that maybe all these things I've done, all the achievements, going to law school, being in the military, all the things I've done in life, were those just a way of trying to feel good enough? Or because I thought I should? Or were they because I really wanted to? And, way back in the day, when I first got out of college, I served in the Air Force. I was an officer in the Air Force. And when I was having my third child, we did the math and realized my entire income would be going to childcare. So I went in one day from being a captain in the Air Force to a stay-at-home mom. You want to talk about an identity change? It was amazing how you say you're a captain in the Air Force. Oh, that's so interesting. Wow. Get a lot of external, validation. You say you're a stay-at-home mom. It's like, all right, yeah, got to go. Right? There's no respect there. And I wasn't giving myself the respect. So I really had to look at, can I be okay if I'm not calling myself a lawyer? Can I find a way to be enough without the external validation? Can I feel worthy and good enough without all that? So went to my husband again. I got another crazy idea. He's like, we'll make it work. And I left the practice of law and retired. And I gave it a shot. And what I found out, I found life coaching and found my purpose. And I found out, it takes some work, but I can be okay without that external validation. And I got to say, talking to people, especially ones I used to work with, saying, yeah, I'm a life coach. When I used to be a lawyer, I quit being a lawyer to be a life coach. That gets some interesting looks. It can be kind of funny, actually. So how do you build your own roadmap? What do you need to do? Absolutely, job number one is self-care. When we're taking care of others, we're so diligent about it. When we're taking care of ourselves, not so much. We kind of feel like that's indulgent, that's selfish, right? And we give ourselves what I call like the level of self-care that you need to to survive. And by that, think about a baby, right? So you have a baby. All right. You got to feed them every now and then. You don't have to really feed them anything particularly great, but you got to feed them something. And you can stick them in a crib so they don't like roll over. You might have to change them every now and then. And if they make a lot of noise, just yell at them. It's okay. Just shut the door. Just shut the door on them. And maybe go feed them tomorrow. They'll survive, but they're not going to thrive. So if you want a baby to thrive, what do? You give them the best food you can on kind of a regular schedule. You give them tummy time so that they can start building their muscles and start doing, finding the world. You give them stimulation, you hug them, you sing to them, you talk to them nicely. You don't scream at them because they're crying. And you don't let anyone near them that's going to do something like that. So why don't we give ourselves that kind of care that's needed to thrive? Like, think about the internal dialogue that we all have going on very often. Oh, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? Oh, right? You wouldn't talk to a baby that way. Yet we do it to ourselves. So really, we tell ourselves we don't have time for self-care. Working on that internal dialogue does not take any time. And if you can do that, then the rest of it, eating better, moving more, getting more sleep, that all becomes a lot easier if you just get that internal dialogue to be a little bit nicer. So the process is pretty simple. You got to figure out where you're at, right? I'm going to go through some questions, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on them. And in the handout, there's a lot more questions than what you're going to see on the slides. So really use the handout as a resource. It's something you can go back to. You can use them as journaling prompts, or you can have a session where you just really sit down and go through a bunch of questions. Up to you. Once you've kind of figured out where you're at, then you want to imagine, really think about, well, where could I be? Where do I want to be? Really let yourself go and think about what's possible for me. And then you just pick something. You just make a decision. And once you decide, the really tough part is taking action. And that is by far the hardest part. And that's why it's the biggest bubble, because that's where most of the work really is. So let's look at a couple of ground rules. So this comes back to that self-care thing, right? When you're assessing, or anytime during this process, be honest with yourself, but don't be judgmental, right? Honest is, I let myself get to 160 pounds at 5 feet tall. That's obese. That's honest. Telling myself, oh, what a loser. You should have done something better. You let yourself get there. Oh, what's wrong with you? No, that's being judgmental. That's turning the data of what my weight was with my height into drama. It's not necessary. You can be honest with yourself without beating yourself up. As you're answering the questions, our brains love to go to, I don't know. Well, don't let it go there. Just ask yourself instead, well, if I did know, then what would I do? Or if I had to guess, what would I say? Right? That helps you get past that I don't know thing. So if you're assessing where you're at, one of the first questions you can ask yourself is, what's going right in my life right now? What's not? Right? You can ask yourself, what are my priorities? And if you were to take your last 3 days and write down everything you did and how you spent your time, how well would that align with those priorities? Where does it align? Where doesn't it? Barry and Brian talked about looking at, your definition of wealth. This is very similar. What if you rated the areas of your life on a scale of 1 to 10? How would those play out? Right? So maybe in the chat, what comes to mind when you ask yourself, if I could change one thing today, it would be, right? And then we want to imagine. So anything goes here, really have fun with it. So every now and then if the Powerball gets really high, I'll buy a ticket. Drives my husband nuts because to him that's paying the stupid tax. But here's the thing. I will sit there, I'll do the math, and I figure out, okay, so if this is the pot, then if I take cash and then a 50% off for taxes, this is how much I get, and then what am I going to do with it? I get 3 or 4 hours of fun out of that. So that's what I paid $2 for. And my husband doesn't get it at all. I try to talk to him and he's like, we're not going to win. I don't want to talk about it. But to me, it's kind of fun. And when I do win, I know exactly what to do because I've run the scenario enough times, right? So have some fun with it. Watch out for the limiting beliefs. Oh, that's stupid. This won't work, right? I'm too old. Just suspend disbelief. Other people's thoughts or opinions are their business. They do not matter. What matters is what you think, right? Maybe I stayed practicing as an attorney a little too long because I was worried about other people's thoughts and opinions. And then you want to think about should versus want. So if you have a lot of sentences like, I should do this, I should do that, I should be this way, I should be that way, take the word want, put those in those sentences instead of should. Are they still true? That can be a really good exercise, right? So Corinne Crabtree, she's one of my mentors, and if you know her, you'll realize this is totally a paraphrase, but she says, you know, the past is a teacher, not a fortune teller. And it's a paraphrase because she would have had a couple F-bombs in there. But that's really true, right? So as you're imagining what's possible, don't be looking at your past for evidence of what's possible, right? So if you were to imagine what's possible, what would your ideal day look like? At the end of the year, what do you want your life to look like? Like really, like fast forward in your head a year. What would be amazing if your life looked like that, or if you felt that way? Is there a dream or a goal that you've been putting off? And what is it? Is there something that you've always wanted to try or learn, or something you've wanted to do? Maybe you've kind of let fear or worrying about what people might think keep you from doing it. Maybe now's the time. And then you just have to decide, right? So, you know, hopefully when you imagine all this, you'll come up with like a pretty big list, like you really want to brainstorm. And it can be big things, small things. Like one of the things I have on my list right now is to learn Spanish, right? That may not be anything big for someone, but it's just something I want to do. And that's all that matters. So you want to just pick one thing to focus on. You can do more than one, but I think it's easier sometimes if you just pick one. If you're having trouble deciding, maybe think about what would be the one thing that if I changed it, it would have the biggest effect. Or maybe what's my biggest pain point and what would address that? Just realize that the skills you learn doing all this, those skills are going to apply if you go back to your list and pick on something else to do, right? They're going to apply in all those other areas. The doubt and the fear is going to creep in. It's going to happen. So just watch for it, let it be there, acknowledge it, but don't let it slow you down or stop you, right? The other thing that's really good to do, so once you've picked something, so in my example, maybe it was losing weight, right? You want to ask yourself why. So why did I want to lose weight? Well, so I could be healthier. So why is it important to be healthier? So that I can feel better and I can move easier. Well, why is it important to feel better and move easier? So I could keep up with my kids and maybe live to see my grandchildren. So by asking that why multiple times, you come to a compelling reason. So this is kind of what Brian talked about yesterday with your compass, right? A compelling reason doesn't make the process easy at all. But the compelling reason gives you a reason to go on when it is hard. So just decide, you know, if you're having trouble deciding, here's some questions. If I wasn't afraid what people might think, then I would. If I were 100% certain that I would be successful, then I would do what? What would myself in 5 years tell me to do? What advice would my future self give me? I love this because I think sometimes our future selves have a lot of wisdom that you can tap into. And believe me, when I first started doing this stuff, I was like, I don't know, there's a lot of woo-woo shit. I'm not sure about this. But, you know, give it a shot because I have found it does work. And then you know what? You got to ask yourself, am I really ready? So when I was trying to figure out what to do, yeah, my job felt like the most immediate thing. I also wanted to lose weight, but in reality, I wanted to want to lose weight. I really wasn't there yet. I was more like thinking I should lose weight. I wasn't to the point where I really wanted to. I wanted to want to, but I wasn't there yet. So it's important to know whether you're ready or not. And if you're not, it's fine. Now you got to take action. So, we always tend to get stuck on the how. I need to know how. Before I do anything, I need to know how. Well, no, you don't. Because here's the thing. I picked a program. That wasn't how I ultimately lost the weight. It got me started, but there was a lot of trial and error involved. And so along the way, I would learn things. I'd make mistakes. I would learn. I would change up what I was doing. So you might think you know the how, but until you do something, you don't know the how, right? It's not until you do it that you really know how you did it. If you're building a business, you know this, right? So planning and preparing is very useful, but don't let it become an excuse to not do something, right? You might want to look at it like from a broader level and then look at it at a daily level. Use your calendar. That is so important. Breaking it into manageable chunks. Stephen Chandler, in his book, The Time Warrior, has what he calls a 4-circle method. So you look at, where do I want to be in a year? Okay, if I want to be there in a year, where do I need to be in 6 months? And maybe where do I need to be in a month? And then back it up. What do I need to do today? Right? It can be so much easier. Another good question, because here's the thing. We get in our heads, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And we get like really fired up. Well, we have a tendency to go to this perfectionism thing. And we think like, okay, I'm going to get out of debt. So I'm going to go from like right now I'm spending $350 a week, but you know what? Next week, I'm going to spend 75. And I'm going to put together my plan to do it. Well, if I look at that, am I 80% or better likely that I'm really going to do that? No. You have to meet yourself where you're at, right? So if I know right now I'm spending $350 a week and I want to get out of debt, maybe I want to cut it back to $275. Now that I probably could be 80% or better that I could do it, right? So it's really important to check in with yourself and make sure you're not trying to have that perfectionist fantasy of how you're going to get where you're going. Because you got to meet yourself where you're at. And you got to be willing to make mistakes. I think perfectionism is really a way of staying stuck. And I think a lot of us, or at least me, all right, I'm going to just speak for me. I would be afraid to try things because I felt if I made a mistake, then it meant something about me, right? In reality, making a mistake gives you data. You learn something. If you look at it that way, then you should want to make mistakes. And if you're not making a bunch of mistakes, you're probably not pushing yourself. And when I sat there and I was afraid to make a mistake, or I'd make a mistake and I'd beat myself up, again, bringing in that self-care, that's just using all the drama. If I just look at the data, okay, I didn't do that right. This might work better. What can I learn? That's where you can get that trial and error thing going, and you really start to make the progress. And when you make progress, recognize it. Don't use it as an opportunity to beat yourself up because you didn't make enough progress, right? Because we all do that too. The things that I found have been really helpful, first of all, is honoring your decisions ahead of time, right? So our rational brain is the one that can plan and can look at what's good for me, right? Our primitive brain, that's kind of like the caveman portion of our brain that wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and do it for the least effort, right? So if I say to myself, tomorrow, I'm going to get up early, I'm going to go for a walk for an hour, I'm going to work on my blog for 2 hours, and here's the things I'm going to eat. So my rational brain is planning what works and what's in alignment with my goals. Well, the next day, I want to hit the snooze alarm. I don't want to get up, right? That's my primitive brain because it's really more comfortable in that bed. I don't really want to take a walk. That kind of takes some effort, right? Working on the blog, that's hard. I don't feel like it. Maybe some Netflix would be good, you know? So that's like your primitive brain trying to like seek pleasure, avoid pain, do it for the least effort. And that's where you just have to remind yourself, you know what? The decision was made yesterday. I don't need to make a decision right now. I just need to follow the plan. And the more you can build that skill of doing that, the more progress you're going to make in whatever you want to do. And it becomes a habit, right? So we all have habits. Everything, very much of what we do is a habit. I won't say they're good habits or bad habits. There's just habits that either serve you or they don't, right? So laying my clothes out the night before, that's a habit that serves me. It makes my morning easier, kind of sets up my day. Eating when I'm watching TV at the end of a day, it's a habit, doesn't necessarily serve me really well, right? So it's just paying attention to what those habits are and then just deciding, is this serving me or not? And do I want to keep it? And that's the thing. You're looking at it as data. Does it serve me? Does it not? Do I want to keep it? You're not looking at it like, oh, see, there I go again, eating after dinner. It's never going to work. I'm such a loser. Like, that's just bringing drama to it that doesn't need to be there. Be honest, not judgmental. And again, all along the way, those limiting beliefs and thoughts are going to come in. Now, this isn't enough to make a difference, right? We want that perfectionist thing of we want to do all the things right away. And we think that maybe that 10-minute walk isn't going to be enough to make a difference. Maybe it is, right? Planning the 1-hour walk that we don't do definitely is not enough to make a difference. Or we tend to think, I didn't stick on my plan today, so I might as well quit. Or I'll start on Monday, right? Those are all those just limiting beliefs that you don't have to have. So moving from preparing to doing, some things that you can ask yourself to kind of help get you moving. If I knew what to do, right? When we sit there and think we have to know the how, maybe ask yourself, if I knew what to do or how to start or had to guess, then I would. Asking yourself what's going to get in the way. So as soon as you pick something, your brain's going to offer you a whole lot of reasons why this is not going to work. I'm too old. It's not going to, So say I decided that I want to move to a new city and I want to change jobs. Well, my brain's first thing it's going to say is, you've never been there. You don't know anyone there. You don't have a job there. You don't have that much saved to rely on, right? So take each one of those, make them an action step, right? Okay, I've never been there. Maybe I'll take a long weekend and I'll go visit. I don't know anyone there. Well, maybe I'll list 5 ways that I could get to know some people there. I don't have a job. Maybe I'll send some resumes out. Maybe I'll contact a headhunter, right? So when your brain's telling you all the reasons it won't work, use it. It's good information. And I love this question. You're going to see this a lot. What would it be like if it were easy? I have a bad habit of telling myself, this is going to be so hard. If I turn it around and I ask myself, well, what would it look like if it were easy? How would it feel? How would it be if it were easy? It kind of gets me out of that it's so hard and gets me into problem solving. Along the way, because this is a process, it takes time, you're going to get stuck every now and then. So sometimes you might just have to ask yourself, like, what would taking action today look like for me? And especially when you're grieving, what action looks like on Monday could be very different from what it looks like on Friday. And it's okay. So maybe on Monday, a 10-minute walk is what action looks like for me. And that is the best I can handle. Maybe on Friday, it's an hour walk and maybe some yoga, right? It's more about figuring out on a particular day, what does it look like for me? What's the best I can do that day? Sometimes if you're if your goal is not so much a doing thing as a being thing, right? This is a good question. So if I want to be a more patient person, you could ask yourself, how can I practice patience in the next 2 days? And then you want to get really granular with your answer. So instead of being like, well, I'll count to 10. No, like it would look more like, well, when my son interrupts me for the 15th time when I'm trying to write this, then I will, right? Be really specific, and that's going to help you so much more than just kind of the generalities. And again, what would it look like if this was easy? That's a question you can always go back to. And then maybe check in. Is the way I'm thinking and the things I'm doing aligned with my goal, right? If my goal is to get out of debt and I'm watching the shopping channel, they might not be aligned. And along the way, you're going to have to reassess, right? So if I jump in a boat and I want to go out to that island and I set my compass, I'll get there, right? Well, not necessarily, because there's a current and there's wind. So all along that path, I need to course correct. It's no different here. So you want to look at, if I had a day where I didn't keep my word to myself, where I didn't honor my decisions ahead of time, do I like my reason, right? So, all right, if I say I'm going to work on a blog post for 2 hours, and I really don't feel like it, so I go watch Netflix. No, I don't like my reason. So what can I do different next time? Yet, if I'm halfway working through that blog and my son who's in England calls me and I talk to him for an hour, I'm okay with that. I like that reason and I would do it again. So there's no reason to beat myself up because I didn't honor my decision ahead of time, because I like my reasons for not doing it. When you look at the data, right, don't use it as an excuse to beat yourself up. Use it to learn. What's working? What's not? What do I want to start doing? Again, is the way I'm acting and the things I'm doing aligned with where I want to get to? So I just want to end by saying, you absolutely can do this. And I want to share a quote. This is from Elizabeth Benton in her book, Chasing Cupcakes. She says, transformation is not a journey you pursue. Transformation is now. Change happens in any moment you choose it. Every choice can be change, and every moment is a blank slate. So when you think about it, you're not transformed because you got to your goal, like because you got out of debt, for example. You got out of debt because you transformed yourself with every decision you made in every moment, right? Every moment that you chose change is how you got there. That's where the transformation happened. So, I went from a place of feeling like, oh, my course is set. This is normal. You're in your 40s. This is the way life's going to be. Too bad, so sad, right? I was very much like in that victim mode. And now I'm in a place where I'm intentionally choosing and I'm kind of living my purpose and I'm kind of liking it. But I want you to realize, I'm not a special unicorn and any one of you can do it. It's not something special in me. It's what's special in each of you that you have internally. You all have inside of you what you need. So I'm going to end with one final quote. So a friend of mine, when I was growing up, her mom gave me this book when I was a teenager, and I go back to it all the time. And one of the quotes out of the book is, "You're never given a wish without also being given the power to make it true. You might have to work for it, however." So get to work. So if anyone has questions, love to hear them. Let me stop sharing. And if you're watching on the replay, just email me. All right, let me stop sharing. It was a lot. It was a lot.
That was awesome, Joan. That was awesome. That was awesome. So what are you guys thinking? What's your wish?
What questions can I answer?
Joan, a question for you. What's your next wish?
Oh, my next wish. Well, we got we're in sort of a flux right now. We're looking probably a year to 18 months, my husband will retire. Right now, we're splitting our time between Delaware and Arizona, and I would like to be out there full time. But we found out my daughter is pregnant, and I will have my first grandchild at the beginning of December, and they live here. So we're sort of working through that. How do we want to do this, and what do we want it to look like? So we're kind of thinking about what do we want things to look like, and we're looking for a puppy. It's going to be probably a year before we can get the one we want. If anyone knows any good Newfoundland breeders, let me know. And so there's kind of things. And I mentioned I want to learn Spanish. So there's I've always kind of got things out there.
I'm just really taken with this idea of having a wish, which means that we have the power to make it true.
Absolutely.
We've been taught to wish when we see a falling star, but we haven't been taught that second part, which is, and it's part of your reality because you have the power.
I firmly believe it all comes back to what choices are you willing to make?
So Leslie is sharing the phrase that she's familiar with is a goal without a plan is just a wish, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, a goal without
right.
a plan is just a wish.
What
Okay,
tracking?
so I'm
okay,
sorry.
go ahead.
Gina's
No, you go ahead.
Gina's got a question for you, which is what tracking did you use to make the most impact with time and exercise?
Yeah, so that, like I said, trial and error, right? That has changed a lot. I've kind of developed my own calendar that I like. I still like paper. I've tried to get onto electronic. It doesn't work for me. So, but I like to see my week. So I haven't been able to find one to buy. So I just kind of made one that I like. And I don't have it handy. I'm sorry. It basically just has like my priorities for the week, and it has each day, and I put down like my appointments on there, and then I slot in where am I going to do things to make those priorities happen. So that's kind of the time thing. For the food and the exercise, I put the exercise on that calendar, right? What am I doing which day, right? And then the food, I will just list down real quickly. All right, here's what I'm going to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then I just go back and I check. Oops, nope. And there's a lot I'll be honest, there's days where it's like, all right, yeah, I had meal 1, I had meal 2, and then I had all the ice cream that was in the freezer. Right? But the difference is I've gotten to where that's not an excuse for me to start next month again and go hog wild in between. And it's not an excuse to beat myself up. It's just, that's what happened. Right. And I'll go back and I'll look, well, what was my thinking? Why was I doing that? And that's kind of helpful. So it really doesn't matter what you use to track. Like for me, it's just real simple on paper. Some people like MyFitnessPal. I didn't really love that because I really try to eat where if I'm not hungry, I don't eat. And MyFitnessPal gives you lots of nasty messages if you have less than a certain number of calories. And so then my mind would go to, oh, I haven't had that number of calories. I can have more to eat, even though I'm not physically hungry. So I kind of steer away from that a little bit because I want to get to where internally I know what I need to do for myself, right? I don't want to have to use MyFitnessPal for the rest of my life. So it's just kind of finding what's really important is not how I do it. It's finding what works for you.
Okay. And just one last insight from Leslie. She writes, I love that you realized reaching a particular goal didn't necessarily bring happiness. We
Yeah.
need to understand why we want to achieve that goal. We also need to realize that happiness is the choice we make regardless of where we are in our life, that it's
Yeah.
possible every day.
Because here's the thing, right? John Kabat-Zinn has this book called Wherever You Go, There You Are. And wherever you go, there you are, right? So you lose the weight, you get out of debt. All you have changed is your circumstances. But we all have our thoughts, and our thoughts are what create our emotions. So I can lose the weight, but if I'm thinking, I should have lost more, or look at how saggy my skin is now, I'm still not going to be happy. It's the thought that creates the emotion, right? It's not the changing of the circumstance.
Okay. Thank you so much, Joan. This was the perfect ending for us.
All right. I want to hear from people, like what you end up doing. Big, small, everything in between. I think it would be really fun.
And I've created a community forum for us, so you can also post your wishes in the forum.
That'd be awesome.
And keep us posted on that too. Okay, thank you all so much for being a part of us. Thanks to those who have joined us live, and thanks to those who are watching the archive. This has been just a really wonderful retreat and a really amazing opportunity to share and connect with all of you. Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Denise.